All right, welcome everyone to tonight's CleanStart Spotlight Investor Night. This is a night where companies who are getting investor ready are looking for feedback on their pitches so that they can, when they go for investments, can have a really clean, refined pitch. I'm Thomas Hall, Executive Director of CleanStart, and tonight's Spotlight Investor Night is brought to you by Momentum, Blue Tech Valley, and SMUD. Momentum has a lot of Momentum has just a whole, they do a lot. Let me just put it that way. And if you're looking to work with CEC, grant agencies, fundraising, and business development, check out Momentum. They have a lot of experience in the clean tech space, working with large groups, build clean tech projects. So I encourage, if you have an idea, reach out to them. They're always open for it, along with Blue Tech Valley. Blue Tech Valley is the innovation cluster that we're under through the CEC, and SMUD, our local utility. They'll have a SMUD zero emissions plan by 2030, and they need innovation to be able to get all the way to zero emissions. Now I'm going to quickly hand it over to Gary Simon to introduce CleanStart a bit.
Yeah, so welcome everybody. We're very pleased to say that we're in our 16th year. Trying to offer a helping hand and be a catalyst to the clean tech sector in this region. We've got over 3,500 followers now, and we've had participation overseas as well as throughout the state and throughout the country. So COVID forced us to go virtual on a lot of what we do, but the advantage of that was that we picked up a lot of other followers outside our immediate region. There's just been an explosion of money available in venture capital, and that's had its echoes in early stage money. So there's more clean tech startups that are actually finding early stage funding, and several of them that have been in our community for a number of years and building and growing have gotten to some significant exits and new funding. So in 2021, I think we're over $1.4 billion in funding and acquisition money that has come in since the start of the year, and it's not over yet. We just had a new one announced last week, the acquisition of Clipper Creek by Enphase in the Santa Rosa region. So that was a really good step for them. We have an archive of everything that we do these nights, our meetups, our perspectives discussions, which is like a podcast, the blogs we do. So please take advantage of our archive of all the information that we put together on this. Subscribe and follow us on our newsletter. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and keep alert to the announcements that we make in the newsletter. So Thomas has put up the YouTube channel in the chat room, the link. And so, Thomas, you want to say a little bit about the current campaign that we're in?
Sure. Right now, we're currently doing a fundraising campaign. We'll look back at 2020. We had a fundraising campaign that was very successful, 105% of our goal. Some of you made it up onto our CleanStart Wall of Heroes there. We're really grateful for all the support that you gave us. And since then, we've put on 31 perspectives, 11 meetups, 8 student events with over 100 startups, research, policymakers, advocates, presenting over 1,600 people participating in the events and events like this. So if you really like what we've done and want to continue to support us, we're doing our 2021 campaign right now. We've raised 41% of our goal, and we have our wall back. If you want to kind of hear a quick pitch from us on that, I'm going to drop a link to a video that we made kind of highlighting some of the things that have happened in the past year. And additionally, there is a PayPal supporter button that you can help support CleanStart. And that will go into the chat there. So thank you everyone for supporting us and helping us continue in our mission. It helps us go after grant funding that often requires matches, and helps us turn this region into a clean tech hub. Now we're going to go on for tonight. The format for tonight, there's going to be 4 company pitches, a 10-minute company pitch, 10-minute expert Q&A followed by potentially 5 minutes of audience Q&A. Gary's going to be managing that. And with that, I'm going to let Gary introduce our expert panel.
Yeah, so we're real happy to have 5 people join us tonight to provide feedback to each of the presenters. These are very experienced pros in our area, and to the presenters, I think you'll really benefit from and enjoy the feedback that you get tonight. So we have Justin Bardel, who's a senior attorney with Weintraub Tobin. Weintraub Tobin has a number of small business clients, including a number of clean tech companies, and they've been a real help to us in providing some free advice to early stage companies, and even serving as our own attorney. Alex Chomp, Executive Director and founder of Evolution Accelerator, another business accelerator in the area that focuses on clean tech and other activities. John Sullipp, my colleague, who was the founder of AgStart and is still the chair of that. But he's also got other activities. He's on the board of the Sacramento Angels. He's been a personal investor in a number of companies, and AgStart is very, very active in the area. Dan Killen is an investor, member of the Sacramento Angels as well. He's a board member on CleanStart's board. And Janine Elliott has been added at Venture Catalyst at UC Davis as an associate director, focusing on the physical sciences and engineering connected companies. Has been a presenter in one of our podcasts recently, explaining some of the new things that Venture Catalyst have done. So I welcome each of those. Thank you each for your participation, and we look forward to your feedback for each of the panel members, for each of the presenters, excuse me. So now we need to move on to introducing our speakers. Thomas? Hope you're not on mute.
I am on mute. So tonight, I'd like to welcome the 4 companies we have: EV Life, Ascent Analytics, Limina, and Hexus. And we're going to go ahead and start off with Kevin Favreau, co-founder of EV Life. So go ahead and start, share your screen when you're ready.
Absolutely. Thank you. Also, Peter Glenn is joining me as well. We're going to split the screen, split the slide responsibilities.
Do I need to make him a co-host?
No. I'll be running the slides. Okay.
Peter, welcome.
Thanks, everyone. Happy to be here.
Oh, you got the new Mach-E there on the slide.
Boom. All right. Well, thanks for having us, everyone. Gary and Thomas, it's always, you've been a big help over the last couple of years, and thank you for welcoming us back. We are excited to share our progress, share what we are up to, and share some exciting news at the end about a pilot opportunity that we are about to embark upon. So with all that being said, my name's Kevin. And my co-founder Peter and I are excited to share about EV Life today. At EV Life, we're on a mission to accelerate EV adoption, making buying an electric car as simple and affordable as buying a gas car. To avoid the most catastrophic effects of climate crisis, the US needs to cut its greenhouse gas emissions by 50%. Fortunately, Californians who switch to an EV can reduce their driving emissions by 80%. It's one of the most significant and impactful lifestyle changes they can make to do their part in combating climate change. Unfortunately, if you're not an early adopter or a technologist, you probably look at an EV and just see a car that's up to 50% more expensive. And as a result of this green premium, 94% of EV owning households today make more than $200,000 a year. Even though there are generous incentives and low income grants available, most people aren't aware that these programs even exist. Once they do become aware, accessing this money requires understanding complex eligibility criteria, multiple tedious application forms, and the need to wait 6 to 18 months to receive that money. In addition, incentive programs often change throughout the year, making it really difficult for people to keep track of new guidelines and funding amounts. And with the average family having just over $5,000 in the bank, they don't have the ability to use their EV incentives to lower the upfront cost of their EV. For California to hit our goal and scale new cars sold from 10% EV today to 100% EV by 2035, customers need simpler, more affordable paths towards owning an electric car. At EV Life, we believe the EV buyer's customer journey is unique, and so we're building an end-to-end platform that gives them everything they need to find and finance an electric car. We simplify the pre-purchase research phase with EV Atlas. Our climate loan customers save up to $200 a month with special incentive-based financing, and Navigator streamlines the process to help the buyer recoup over $10,000 in incentives, as well as setting them up to charge at home. Our proprietary incentives engine powers all of our products. The incentives engine processes over 375 EV and charger incentives for zip codes across all 50 US states, including tax credits, rebates, carpool stickers, total cost of ownership savings like fuel and maintenance. By analyzing over 20 data points, our engine can determine in seconds and down to the dollar a buyer's complete incentives package. And finally, our engine automatically scans each incentive program every 30 minutes and alerts us when the program changes. In April, California's rebate program ran out of budget, and we were able to pause the incentive from our site until the program received more funding. These real-time updates are crucial given how quickly incentives change. To support the EV buyer's journey, we start with EV Atlas, our tools to simplify range, charging, and incentives. These modules are live on our website today, and through our API and integrations, we can power a white labeled experience on any of our partners' websites. We licensed EV Atlas to Nissan earlier this year, and it now powers incentive calculations for Nissan's entire electric lineup. Our incentive-based financing solution aims to make owning an EV as affordable as a gas car. Most customers are eligible for about $10,000 in incentives, but since that money is typically post-purchase, it doesn't actually affect the upfront cost of the car. The type of loan we're developing has three special characteristics. The buyer's incentives are used as a down payment. Their monthly payment is then calculated off of the reduced principal, and they're given a grace period to repay the incentive portion at a later date. If you put that all together, the customer saves up to $200 a month. And when the customer drives off the lot, their work isn't finished. They could have 5 to 10 different incentive applications to manage, as well as needing to install a home charger. Our EV Navigator tool is like a TurboTax for EV incentives. It streamlines the incentive filing process by providing detailed action plans, step-by-step instructions, and the ability to autofill PDFs and online applications. Navigator ensures that EV owners stay on top of all their incentives and don't leave any money on the table. The US EV market is expected to grow to $1.4 billion by 2025. With a revenue opportunity of $400 per EV, that creates over $100 million in direct marketing opportunity for EV Life. And now I'll hand it to Peter to continue on.
Thanks, Kevin. At EV Life, we are using proven business models to deliver products to our customers. For B2B, we sell EV Atlas as a SaaS license to automakers and banks to help their customers save on driving electric. And for B2C, EV climate loans are revenue through loan origination and referral fees, which in turn give borrowers access to EV Navigator. Navigator could also be purchased as a standalone product on our website. We also see B2B customers as channel partners. The more affordable we make EVs, the more B2B customers like Nissan will want to promote our products in their sales channel. It's a virtuous circle. We've been completely blown away by the growth we've had in the past few months. Since winning a CalSeed Concept Award last year, our consumer website now attracts over 6,000 users per month, and our climate loans have been validated by over 700 pre-launch signups. Our SaaS deal with Nissan proves that our business model is working, and we expect to close 1 to 2 more deals by end of year. And we're also working on a pilot for EV climate loans in Q1 with a national lender and 2 automakers, including Nissan. From all this traction, we're forecasting strong growth over the next 5 years, driven by the launch of our EV climate loan and EV Navigator products. Selling B2B licenses of EV Atlas generates modest base revenue in the next year, but mainly establishes channels to scale our consumer products, which make up the majority of our $32 million in revenue in 2025. By 2025, our biggest sustainability impact will be enabling over 166,000 new EV purchases for low and middle income drivers by removing EV barriers with EV incentives and financing. And this cohort of drivers that we help switch from gas to EVs will actually save $1.6 billion on fuel and maintenance over the next 10 years just by driving electric. These EVs will also reduce emissions and toxic air pollution, generating $3.9 million per year in health benefits for the state of California. This will have a huge impact, particularly on Black and Latino communities, because they breathe 40% more toxic air pollution than white communities in the state. No company supports the entire EV driver's journey from finding, financing, and filing for EV incentives. And our proprietary technology creates a feedback loop that will only improve as it scales, creating a moat to protect us against future competition. As a founding team of 3, we have decades of experience building and scaling consumer technology at startups and tech companies like Adobe, Cars.com, and Glassdoor. With new funding, we've recruited 2 exceptional part-time directors to build out our team. And it is crucial that we begin to transition them into full-time roles and hire more software engineers to close gaps and ensure flawless execution of our strategy. We're also backed by an advisory board that complements our team with expertise in clean energy, finance, policy, and product development with some of the world's most trusted brands. We are currently raising a promissory note for a debt fund for our first 25 EV climate loans, a $250,000 raise. And that is specifically for automaker pilots with Nissan and another partner. We're also exploring a seed round raise in 2022. And in the meantime, we're also looking for intros to potential B2B customers for our EV Atlas and EV Navigator products, as well as lending partners for EV climate loans, banks, and other fintechs, as well as channel partners for the loans as well. And then as Kevin mentioned earlier, our big call to action for this group, given your location, is that we're launching this pilot with Nissan in Sacramento, greater Sacramento area, Sacramento County, and making EV climate loans available specifically for the Nissan Leaf, helping customers save up to $200 by factoring in their, say, up to $10,000 in EV tax credits and rebates. This pilot is starting December 1st. It's exclusively in Sacramento County. If you are interested or want to share it with your friends, go to evlife.co/Sacramento to find out more, and signing up is free. You can get on the wait list and we'll get you started in terms of what it takes to qualify for that loan once you sign up. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time and look forward to any questions and feedback you have for us.
A round of applause for a great presentation, guys. So we're going to turn to our panel for some questions. And I'll make one comment while people are collecting their thoughts. And that is that you're a great example of what we try to do at CleanStart, because EV Life was born out of a startup weekend. You came to one of our CleanTech CEO crash courses and graduated from that. And then we helped you come up with an application for the CalSeed Concept Award money, and now you're taking the next step into the promissory note and the seed round. So that's just it demonstrates that, you know, there is a pathway here, and if you follow the steps, you can get to success. I'm also impressed, whether you call it evolution or the famous pivot, how much your ideas for the product have evolved since that first startup weekend. And it's really good to hear. And it sounds like you've got some really solid solutions there. So let's turn to our panel. And who would like to go first to offer a comment? Maybe Dan, can we start with you?
Sure. Thanks, Gary. And first of all, Kevin and Peter, I thought it was a really good presentation. And I think you did very well by covering not only the technology and the what the customer sees, but also the business side of it. So congratulations on that. I do have a few questions. I can throw them both out at you and then you can answer. One is, I'm just still trying to understand exactly what is your main focus of the business. Is it the app that you've developed and that you're using and you're licensing to Nissan, or is it the loan program? And I think it's, well, it can come across sometimes as maybe confusing when you have two different areas of your business that you may want to comment on how those work. And the second question is, how much follow-on funding do you think that you're going to need at the seed round as well as follow-on rounds? And as an investor, we always look at your future revenue, your future profits and potential valuations versus how much money you're going to have to raise before we can actually have a liquidity event or exit. So quite a few questions, but I'll leave it to you to answer.
Maybe I can take that one. First of all, to your question about the main focus, I'd say like if we look at revenue, we look at like what's the scalable opportunity here. I think it's the loan and it's the access to Navigator, EV Navigator to file your incentives after you get a loan, or if you don't get a loan with us to be able to file those incentives. But those two consumer products, it's kind of a step one and step two for customers. Just a behind the scenes story, we really never set out to sell a SaaS license to Nissan or any other automaker. We were pitching them on the loan and they liked us and they said, we have a need for incentive calculator tool on our website. We actually have, we're looking around. Would you guys like to bid on this product? And we ended up winning the bid. And now we have like another line of business that doesn't require major product or dev lift to be able to continue to sell to other automakers and other partners, the banks. So primarily we're focused on the loan and the supporting Navigator product, which is really a component of the loan to help customers file and recoup their incentives quickly.
Okay, great.
And, the B2B products with Nissan is really about, getting more capital, more revenue in the door to build the relationship and also to continue bootstrapping for as long as we can. To your question on the investment, it's probably too soon to comment. We haven't really thought seriously about what the amount would be, what any valuations would be, but we're really focused on executing these pilots right now with our partners and getting our loans in the market, but certainly open to having those conversations next year as we get more engaged in the investment side of things.
Peter, if I could jump in. I was also somewhat confused by the three products, the Atlas, the Climate Loan, and the Navigator in terms of your focus. It sounds like the EV Atlas is kind of a nice to have that links you in, and actually strategically it could tie you in much more closely to Nissan as a specific channel for EV loans and everything else. So understanding your focus, helps keep you concentrated on the right kinds of things. The EV Climate Loan and EV Atlas seem very focused on the specific auto manufacturers. You can get into the sales process for each new EV. Does that generate automatically the consumer connections for EV Navigator, or do you need to expand EV Navigator to a broader set of consumers? Because your go-to-market can either be concentrated through the EV sale with Nissan or other automakers as they sign up, or if your go-to-market is, I just need to sign up all EV consumers, that's a whole different challenge. And I didn't hear you talk about how you would reach out beyond for example, the Nissan automaker and auto sale process to broaden your consumer appeal for Navigator.
Mm-hmm. Kevin, do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, the focus, like the core of what we're trying to do is the climate loan. Everything is powered by our incentives engine. It's the same engine that powers the pre-sale, the climate loan qualification for the incentives, and then determining the person's action plan for Navigator. So the core technology we're building and we're evolving is the incentives engine. And now we layer on these services on top of that at the key points of the customer's journey. We believe the most impact we'll have in the customer's journey is the ability to save them up to $200 a month. So Climate Loan is definitely our focus. We're excited to be partnering with Nissan on the pilot here, coming up next month. But it doesn't, and so in terms of Navigator, sorry, my dog is scratching at the door. In terms of Navigator, I think we're going to have a consumer play through our website, but the focus initially will be to ramp up climate loans, give access to Navigator, and be able to evolve Navigator organically through the sale of climate loan. But not everybody's going to want a climate loan. Not everybody's going to need a climate loan. Not everybody's going to learn about a climate loan before they purchase the vehicle. So Navigator is there. We find a lot of people buy the car and then learn about incentives. In fact, we just had a meeting with somebody yesterday who we helped buy a car back in 2020. He told us that he completely missed the $2,000 California incentive. So we feel like we also have a strong play for people that have nothing to do with us before and during the purchase, but still can receive a lot of value out of what we're doing post-purchase.
So you're focused on really the purchase transaction that generates the loan is the kind of bullseye. And then you also can spray beyond the bullseye to other consumers that come in kind of asynchronously, either after purchase or et cetera.
Yeah.
Did you mention you have a financial partner for the climate loan, or are you actually underwriting the loan itself? Are you generating the loan from your own funds, or is that a partner that you're kind of linking in?
Yeah, we're doing both. We're testing both in small quantities, right? We're about to close out this promissory note we mentioned, this debt fund of sorts, to begin piloting this month, or just December 1st in Sacramento, and that's to get as much learning as we can, because we have a larger bank, like a nationwide bank, that is looking to partner starting in Q1. And so we wanted to make sure we took our own reins and were able to dog food or champagne our own product while we had more control before partnering, with a partner that wants to scale up more commercially, more quickly across the country. So we're doing both at this point, testing them out and trying to learn which way might be best for us and best for our customers.
No, it's fantastic. You've got a well-defined niche, and if you can really provide tailored services, an EV loan based on recouping incentive is not just like a used car loan that anyone can offer. So you have a real defensible position there in that space compared to just, Joe Auto Loan, who's out there just offering money to anybody.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a nice strategy.
I can jump in. So thank you so much for your presentation. I actually worked with Lacey for a little while, and so loved seeing John Siegler on your list there of people in your orbit. And I think that EV adoption is a very complex issue, and so the way you broke down using storytelling, using those different factors at the beginning to really break down the issue for people who might not be aware of it, and the way that you wove in both the business case and the environmental justice case, I thought were really striking. So kudos on that front. I'm right there with the other questions that have already come in, so I'm not going to belabor those ones. But I guess as you think about that 80% of people who could use what you're providing here, what customer segments are you specifically targeting, and how are you reaching them to raise awareness as you move forward?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. So our initial focus is on, middle-class millennials, folks that are probably making somewhere between $70,000 and $100,000 a year, but have limited savings because they're paying off student loans. They perhaps don't own a home, and they're making a tough choice between, I need a new car, especially now with COVID. I need a new car, but I have to make a tough choice, right? Do I get a typical commuter gas car, which is $10,000 cheaper than an EV, a Camry or a Corolla, an Accord, or do I spend $10,000 more on an EV and like a $40,000 EV? And we're trying to like remove that choice in terms of like being able to use those incentives, package those incentives in upfront so a customer can save up to $200 off their monthly payment and not have to make a tough financial trade-off. So really starting with those customers in mind, some of the banks we're looking to partner with have a real focus on this audience, this middle-class millennial audience. So that's one channel we're looking to go to market with. Also through our website, we've organically gardened through like SEO and digital marketing efforts have secured over $7,000 unique users per month coming through our site to convert. And then those B2B2C partnerships, I think, is really where scale starts to happen. When we align ourselves with the interests of automakers like Nissan and other banks that we're about to enter into partnerships with, who are all have a vested interest in helping sell and finance electric vehicles. I think those are the channels that really help us scale quickly. And as a startup is leveraging the size and the scale and alignment with those interests.
Great, thank you. I appreciate the comprehensive customer archetype and a little bit about that journey about how you reach them. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, let's turn to Alex and then Justin for comments. Alex?
Well, hi, guys. First of all,
Alex.
Congratulations on your great progress. You did start at a Startup SAC weekend, and you had a good idea then, and it's an even better idea now. So that's fantastic. Gary's 100% correct when he talks about this is exactly what we're hoping to do here. I went to some of the same places that Dan and Janine and John went. And I was wondering if maybe you could boil some of your potentials down into metrics that are, let's call them universal, right? So you'll see some universal metrics in conversations like yours that are essentially like middleware products that rely on software. You'll see concepts like cost of acquisition or total lifetime value. And if you can boil your customers down to concepts like acquisition and cost of value, and then get your ratios to the point where your values are, let's say, 3 or 4 times your cost of acquisition, then you got something to really cook with there. I think when I think about your numbers, a $10,000 loan on average for 166,000 vehicles, that's a total loan value creation of about 1.6 billion. Yeah, if I get all my zeros in there right, and I put my commas in there. And when I hear that your extraction model is based on software as a service licensing, I would love to see you turn to an extraction model that is a percentage of the value created. I'd love to see you be able to say, we're creating $1.6 billion in loan value here, which translates to quite a bit more in auto sales value. And here's all these great carbon costs that we're accruing and so forth. If you could find a way to extract that value on a percentage, 50 basis points, 75 basis points, I think you'd have a runaway smash hit with your niche, as long as you could defend it, which was where I think the challenge is. The complexity that you've solved today is solvable by future competitors. So great work.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Justin?
Yeah, no, I think I sort of agree with some of the stuff other folks have said. My only thing to add on to that would be, I think it's fairly easily solvable for you guys. I think you sort of reorder some of the slides, focusing on the core things and moving Atlas to a bit more of an add-on. And I think your presentation's pretty much golden from there. The one question that I had was, when you sort of presented some of the numbers and metrics about people's needs and how people are using cars and stuff. Actually, Peter, you said something about deciding between a car or being able to buy a car now, especially with COVID. And I was wondering if any of those numbers or that analysis has changed at all with people working from home, maybe not commuting as much, and sort of changing that analysis for people.
Good question. I think the jury's still out in terms of what the data says about COVID. I think I brought it up mainly in the context of, being in Northern California and knowing anecdotally, many friends who relied on mass transit suddenly switching to single car use, buying new cars, many cases buying just pure gas cars. And seeing that the idea of a COVID car growing, we'll have to dig into the data, but it does seem like at least a short-term trend of more car purchasing, individual car purchasing, and moving away from mass transit.
I think the other thing I'm hearing anecdotally a lot is, especially here in California, is everyone's aware now. A lot of people are aware of the future ban on gas car sales here in the state by 2035. We're hearing a lot of people say, well, my next car is obviously going to be electric now. Like, I'm not going to buy at least one of my 2 cars in my family will be electric. And so tapping into those people, those are they're not their early adopters. They're kind of further along the adoption curve, but they're the next wave. People that are 2-car families that need to replace the gas car and see the writing on the wall. And the technology is at a certain point now where the range, the battery, the charging infrastructure, it's all happening. It's all there. It's a lot easier now than it was 2 years ago. So people are seeing a path to going electric, and we want to help them with that path in a more affordable way.
Great, thank you guys.
Travis, sorry, we're not on.
All right, well, I know that to another call. I think we've had a very good discussion here. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I see a question from Travis about hydrogen fuel cell. It does not support them to date. All of
I see. Now, I just got added. Go ahead and answer that question.
Yeah, our incentives engine supports the hydrogen cell fuel cell vehicles, but they are not live on our website today. You can't browse them. So we look to be adding that after we get through the pilot phase and after we get through a couple other burning issues. But it would be fairly simple for us to add the fuel cell vehicles, and we're already supporting them on the back end.
And we have a question here on what considerations have you given to battery disposal, recycling, reuse as part of your sales strategy?
It's a great question. I think there's a lot of innovative companies working on that exact problem. Some right here in Sacramento. That is not a core problem that we are focused on at the moment, as we get our loan off the ground. But definitely is a consideration of ours. We think about it. We're hoping that somebody else in the region is going to come up with a winning solution that we can direct people to.
I think it's also just educating people on the ways that it's already happening. I think public awareness is probably like 5 to 10 years behind.
Right, well,
the
we're
market.
going to have to let these. Exactly. We are going to have to let these guys go. I would add to everything that we've said there. Storytelling is so important in the way that you start, and you've got some great stories you can tell. Just, if you start with, the buying a electric vehicle and making sure you get all the incentives, is way too complicated. And give the example of the guy that, didn't completely miss the $2,000 tax credit. And the fact that there's like 10 incentives there, I doubt that people know that even half of them should be considered. So
Right.
Great job on the presentation. Thanks so much to everybody who gave feedback and questions from the audience. So good luck, guys.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thanks
so
for
let's
having
move
us.
on to great.
All
Thomas?
right. Next, we're going to be welcome John Messner of Ascent Analytics. Go ahead and share your screen when you're ready.
All right, thank you very much. Let's see. Let's share this. All right, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, good evening, everybody. It is really nice to be here. My name is John Messner. I am the CEO of Ascent OS, which is an operating system for your solar business. With Ascent OS, we want you to be able to sell and install way more solar faster. And I will also add that we formed about 2 weeks ago, and this is the first time that we are presenting it to anybody at all in terms of a deck and a pitch. So really looking forward to your feedback and your comments as we try to begin the journey of getting our pitch solidified and solid. And so please don't hold back, bring it, looking for all the feedback we can get. Thanks to this, this great set of judges here. So I'll start with a little bit of the story first. Like I just said, we're only a few weeks old. So Ascent OS was born out of a solar developer in Northern California called Infinity Energy. Infinity has done over 10,000 leads, proposals, and installs since 2019. They have over 100 employees. And about 4 years ago, they decided they wanted to improve their operations by building out a operating system for their business. They do everything from taking in leads, building proposals, managing sales teams, all the way through system design, CAD, install, and power takeoff. So we approached them via Impact Venture Capital 4 or 5 months ago, maybe 6 months ago, and talked to them about spinning out this technology that they built in-house as a standalone startup. So we've been working very hard behind the scenes the past 3 or 4 months to spin out Ascent OS, and we just did successfully 2 weeks ago. So I'll get into more details about our status here in a minute, but by way of background, Ascent OS, the software company, is built on the many years of hard work by the Infinity team to build a piece of software that can streamline their operations. So what the heck is this software for? Well, at the end of the day, putting our big think hats on, it's about soft cost reduction for solar. The price of solar cells has plummeted over the past decade, but the soft costs remain expensive. Most of you are probably familiar, we're still looking at 64% of the total price for an installed residential solar system to be made up of soft costs. And those soft costs include a lot of things. We're talking about everything from permitting to transaction costs, profit for the installer and developer, lots of labor, the customer acquisition costs. And it's not just as complicated as all of these different listings of costs here that you can see on the screen. We also have complexity that spans states, municipalities, utilities. There are very specific kind of locality-based issues that you have to be able to wrangle in order to really start wringing out some of these soft costs. So Infinity has done that, and Ascent OS is building on the legacy of this code that we've spun out. So Infinity really has built their entire business around this principle of people, process, and technology. Over the past 4 years, they have reduced the time from lead to power takeoff by 30%. They've reduced the number of human touch points at almost every single step along the process to selling and installing solar. And they've accelerated their own sales. They're growing like a weed. They've got 76% year-on-year growth since 2014, and they're really taking off. And this software platform is a big reason for their success. So what are we going to do now that we're taking Ascent OS, which is a platform built for a single customer, Infinity, and now we've spun it out and we want to use it for other solar installers and dealers as well. Well, our approach is going to be to focus on the technology, the piece that we've spun out here, and use that technology to drive process. You can't just have technology and everything's magically changed. You have to build process around your technology. Our plan here is to use technology that we're building and improving upon now as Ascent OS, and really use it to help our customers improve their own process. And again, like I talked about, we're talking about reducing the time from lead to power takeoff by 30%, and reducing human touch points. Just a few quick slides here of the products. We're still working on a proper product demo that I can show you all maybe next time. But the product includes everything from proposal generation. So you can see here a proposal for a home, which brings in things like the actual price per watt of the installed unit. We can give quotes for financing and really make it very easy for a solar salesperson to work with a customer real time to develop a proposal. We integrate with design solutions like Aurora Solar, as well as finance platforms like Sonova to be able to bring in real-time data about, I guess not real-time, but very quick data from our partners around things like financing and power production. And we work with them all the way through the install, contracting, and all the way through, like I said before, power takeoff. And we're developing solutions for how to engage our customers long-term beyond just the installation of the residential solar. So the market for solar, I think this is probably a pretty a kind audience in terms of your knowledge of the importance of solar and how fast it's growing here, right? So I mean, we're looking at forecasts by 2030 of 550 gigawatts, 1,000 gigawatts by 2035, 40x the amount of growth from what we have today. And there are 10,000 plus US installers. To reach these targets, we're going to have more. One of the things that we see is there really isn't a situation where you see the top 4 or 5 solar developers take over 100% of the market. There's going to be a long tail here with a real fat middle of medium-sized 30 plus megawatt installers and dealers to serve this large and growing market. A lot of that, like I mentioned before, is the complexity around the fractured state of the market, that every city and municipality and even state has its own policies. And it's very difficult for a local installer to operate nationally without being able to understand sort of the local politics and regulations and all the complexity that comes along with that. So big, fast-growing market. We want to be the operating system that solar installers use to help streamline their operations to make this a reality. We have an enterprise SaaS model. We charge a setup fee upfront to do customizations, while most every installer and dealer has more or less the same set of things they need to accomplish to either sell or install. There is some differences installer to installer in terms of, say, what CRM they use or what ERP system they use, how they integrate with financing. So we do require some upfront customization, which we charge for. And then we have an ongoing monthly SaaS model for the product that includes things like maintenance, upkeep, and all the usual things you'd expect from an online SaaS platform. Our customer profile has been easy to develop because we can just base it off of the Infinity founding team. The founders of Infinity are people who've been in sales of various types their entire career. They decided they want to start selling solar, and they've been very successful at it. So we have a great sort of template for how we can think about our customer. We're targeting the fat middle of the long tail. So not necessarily the very, very tiny micro installers in sales groups, but really that not your Teslas or your Sunruns, but really that group in the middle. We're talking about 30 to 60 to 100 or so megawatts per year, and installers, dealers, and the combination of both of those as well. There's a lot of competition out there. There are a lot of folks doing different parts of this entire soft cost solution. Most of you are familiar with Aurora Solar. They're amazing at doing PV design. You have organizations like Sighton that are really focused on the sales process and optimizing sales. So our approach here is to try to plug in across the entire set of features you need end-to-end to sell and install solar. And really, like I said, be more of an operating system to let some of these other types of competitors plug into our system and operate. If they don't have installation, they can use our system for install. If it's an installer and they want to use some sales, we can bring in the sales piece of it. So really build an end-to-end solution that can integrate with lots of different partners. The advantage that we bring, like I talked about, and I'll keep saying here, is that we developed this at Infinity Energy with 100 plus dealers and installers. So this really comes from years of experience learning the hard way how to build a software system that works for a solar sales and installation business. It's battle tested. It's used every day. They're selling and they're installing this week, right now, as we speak. Our dev team that we're bringing over to Ascent, they know all the problems that are going to come up. They've seen with Infinity. There's going to be more problems with our new customers. We realize that, but we certainly have a lot of experience dealing with the issues that might come up with this platform. And we really also want to take and own the customer type of approach here, where we build ongoing trusted relationships with our customers and the ultimate end user of the solar install, so we can provide services to those customers after installation that can potentially drive future sales or lead to value capture downstream. The team, executive team, is myself, John Messner. I've been working in renewable energy, efficiency, and tech to market for the past 12 years. I was at the Department of Energy for a bit in the wind and water program, doing a lot of innovative work around how to reduce the cost of wind energy. I've also worked with the National Renewable Energy Lab doing tech commercialization across solar energy, bioenergy, wind, water power, all different types of technologies. So really spinning tech out of the lab is something that I spent most of my career doing. And I'm very, very happy to be joined by Dan Becker, who is the Chief Operating Officer. Dan has over a decade of experience working in enterprise SaaS. He brings the SaaS experience in terms of go-to-market and operations and all the kinds of things we need to get this business off the ground. Our tech team right now is the group that built the platform. We're bringing out the lead devs, led by Bill Kennedy as the product manager, to join the Ascent OS team and continue building our product to make it scalable, to make it work for other customers beyond just Infinity, and to also ensure that we're able to bring over the right talent from Infinity as well as outside of Infinity. We're looking at offshore teams and other talent besides just the Infinity folks. Our board is currently made up of Impact Venture Capital and Infinity Energy. So Impact, many of you might know Jack Crawford and Aaron Anderson, who also works at Impact for Jack. And then we have the CEO of Infinity, Jan Perba, as well as one of the other founders, John LePray, who brings a long experience in product development to our board here. So we have a great initial set of board members who can help us think through all the strategic issues we might come across and really help us grow our business. When we closed our deal 2.5 or so weeks ago, we closed it with $1 million Series seed that was brought in by both Infinity as well as Impact. We are in the process of signing our first customers right now, and we hope to get at least one of them signed before the year end, if not more than one. And we have a backlog of about 40 plus interested customers that are coming through us many times through Infinity Energy themselves, through their partner network, but also individuals who we're coming across just as we've launched the business and we're building out our pipeline. We do plan on raising a Series A in 2022. We aren't exactly sure how much we want to raise yet. We're working on that right now. And we're basically going to figure out a number in terms of the raise target based off of some of our initial traction here in December. And then we should have a better sense for our raise starting at the beginning of the year. And thank you very much for your time. Again, I'm John Messner, CEO of Ascent OS. And we want to help our customers get more solar installed faster and hopefully cheaper. And thank you for your time.
All right, round of applause for John's presentation there. Fantastic, guys. Yes, you are one of the earliest in history companies.
Good, all right.
Here, but
record setting.
It's based on a lot of work inside Infinity Energy. I wonder if I could call on Janine to lead us off on some feedback in this presentation. Janine?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for presenting, John. I think it's really a great testament to the fact that traction and credibility in this space speak louder than the aesthetics of a perfect deck. In fact, you've already raised a Series A, or not a Series A, but a Series seed, and so congratulations.
That wasn't a perfect deck, Janine. Come on, that was pretty
close. I mean, I'm not gonna criticize it too much. But I thought it was interesting that you chose to really lead with the fact that this was a spin out of Infinity. And I guess just before I comment on that, I'd be curious to know why you decided to frame your pitch in that way versus starting with, the sort of more traditional formula of this is my customer, this is their problem, this is the context, this is the market opportunity, this is our traction. Oh, and by the way, we've got Big Brother right here to help us out.
Right.
So I was just wondering if you could tell me a little bit about how you came to that choice.
Yeah, I think because story matters. And I think in our case, especially in the near term here, the story here is that this is not a fresh, brand new software platform that we just came up with a month ago. This is, it came from a customer, right? I mean, we know who our customer is because we came out of a customer. And it's in constant use by our customer today. And I think personally, I think it's a good way to introduce the fact that this isn't just a fresh startup with no experience or sort of no reason for being here. I kind of like the way it ties together, but open to feedback on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some circles, it may present as sort of confusing, or like for me, there was a part of me that was like, my big question that I'm not going to force you to answer right this minute, but was like, oh my gosh, is this a subsidiary relationship? What's the relationship with the parent company? And now I'm thinking all about that legal stuff instead of focusing on this amazing business that you're building and have traction with and have these proof points with because of its origin story. So whether that's just a sentence that you throw in there that explains what that relationship is sort of on the early side as you're describing the origin story, to just put that mental chatter to rest, that might be something to consider.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
You know, so, you know, but I think that, yeah, I mean, just from a pitch deck craft perspective, I thought that it was a really great reading deck. There was a lot of words on it. So just something more so for this audience is usually the audience is not going to be able to get away with quite so many words on a pitch deck. But I think that, you know, you've got that credibility behind you, both as a team and in your technology and in your understanding of the market. And so it's exciting to see where this is going to lead.
Thank you. That's really, really helpful feedback. Thank you.
And Alex, you want to step in and give your comments?
Sure. Well, once again, a Sacramento Genesis story with you know, some mythic figures. You know, it's fantastic stuff. I really love to see it. Like some of the people who you're going to be talking with, I have some experience with software as a service and creating software as a service companies. And some of the challenges that you tend to see in there have to do with concepts like integration and scaling. You know, you tend to taking a product that works for a company and turning it into a platform that works for many companies.
Yeah.
is typically a relatively intricate and involved affair. And the cost of doing that, there's a venerable book called The Mythical Man Month that sets the cost of integration at about 3x the cost of product creation, and sets the cost of sustainability at another 3x. So if it costs you, you know, $1 million to build it, it'll cost you $9 million to turn it into a SaaS platform.
Yeah.
SaaS didn't exist back then. So knowing that you have this great, strong start, and understanding that you're aiming at this concept you call the fat middle of the long tail, I would love to have seen some articulation of that market space. Like, what, you know, what's the rate of creation in that market space, and where's the proof that the rest of that market space has a demand for your product and hasn't developed their own solution for this problem if they live in that market space. So those are things that I think could be helpful. I agree with Janine that you could provide some clarity early on, because I also had some questions kind of floating around in the back of my head. And at least in it, when you're playing to a home crowd and you got a couple stars on your team, I'm going to say lead with the punchline. This is an impact company. We're proud to be here. We're excited to be planning for our A round. Here's the opportunity we see. Let us tell you about it. So yeah, but wonderful. You know what I mean? And software as a service is a great thing for this area to be developing. It's nice to see the technology platform really coming online.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm just taking some notes down here for all this, but that's really good feedback. And you're right. I mean, I think one of the things we're already finding, and it's the positive thing about coming out of a solar developer is that we have all that experience with how they do their process and how they build technology around a process, but it's built for one customer and it's only had one customer. So even thinking about how do you scale this, how do you architect it for the long run, how do you think about security, how do you think about you know, all the technical issues that come around multi-tenant architecture and being able to scale to thousands of customers, that is going to be a challenge, and that's a big part of our focus right now and over the next 6 months.
Yeah, the other thing I would just like you to really think about is that you're selling an enterprise solution, and enterprise B2B sales tend to be fairly lengthy
Yeah.
and fairly intricate. So give some good thought to what does a fully developed product look like and how you're going to make it through a pretty long and complicated sales process.
Yeah. Great point. Thank you, Alex.
Alex and I
Right.
must read the same books because I also recall the Mythical Man Month and the 1, 3, and 9 cost structure. Just to reemphasize that, John, I'll make a comment. Solution for one is not necessarily a solution for all, and it was actually concerning for me that this application that Infinity had developed for themselves, Infinity Energy's processes grew at the same time as the software grew. And so their adoption model for this software internally is not the same as a new customer coming on board and absorbing, if you pitch it as an end-to-end solution for the next solar developer installer, it's probably something that's too big for any new client to swallow. The experience I've had in enterprise software is if you can find one module, you mentioned there are multiple modules for sales and for permitting and for proposing, the proposal development and the design and everything else. If there was one module that you could describe as the killer app, this does something that you can't do with your own internal systems, that becomes the reason for the customer to consider it. And after they've adopted that one module, then they can start incrementally adding additional modules. Eventually you own the whole customer end to end. But if you approach them with, you have to change all of your processes to swallow this elephant whole, you're going to find it's a very long process and not a very satisfying one. So if you could focus on which of those modules has unique, identifiable, referenceable value. Here's what Infinity was before they had this module. Here's what Infinity could do after they had this module. That might make it easier for you to approach a new prospect and say, here's how do you absorb this elephant, one piece, one forkful at a time.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So really identify those must-have components of within the solution, as opposed to just selling this end-to-end solution that seems like a behemoth. Like, I love that analogy of the elephant bowl. Yeah. Again,
I find that approaching it as here's a killer module that you got to have, and by the way, we have all this other stuff that'll simplify your life, but focus on this one. It makes the sales process much quicker, and it makes it more compelling. Just to say, because all of your competitors are going to say, we have an end-to-end solution as well. And then you really have nothing to kind of penetrate. You're just butting chests with the next guy. But if you could say, I have this module, and here's the experience that Infinity went through. I mean, the great advantage you have is you have a customer that's really embraced this and implemented and has some great track record of growth using this software. How can you extract those kind of referenceable examples out of that to make your sales process go more quickly? I think the biggest challenge for enterprise software companies is their go-to-market and getting growth and actually adoption and implementation by their customers. It's not technology. There's plenty of tech out there. It's how do you make it so that you can win customers quickly, have them embrace and adopt your software quickly, and then they can incrementally add modules, in year 2 and year 3. But you want to get that foothold, as quickly as you can.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And we've even with our initial sort of customer discovery and some of our conversations, and Infinity's been looking at doing something like this for a little while. So we've already experienced some of that, just the adoption piece of it. How do you really drive that adoption? It's one thing for a company to say, hey, great, sure, I want to help reduce the time it takes me to sell and install. But then you demo it for them, you even bring them on, you start working with them a little bit, and they don't turn it on for 6 months, right? So how do you avoid that?
No, good. I think you've got a great opportunity. It's great to have a significant pilot customer that you co-design with. And it sounds like they're willing to, and as an investor, they will be willing in the future to continue to co-design with you. So that's a tremendous advantage. Now you just need to turn that into, a sellable product to the next customer.
Yeah.
Next 10 or 50 customers.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny. So the 5 founders of Infinity, we thought about like, oh, we need a VP of sales right away. And then we're like, wait a second. The 5 founders of Infinity are basically like together like a VP of sales. They're just incredible salespeople, and we've already been learning a ton from them how to sell this product. So yeah, it's a big advantage.
Fantastic. Good luck.
Thank you.
Great. Well, let's turn to Justin and then to Dan. And I note also that Peter Mackin has put a good comment in the chat, so take a look at that, John. But let's go to Justin for his comments.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. Appreciate your presentation, and I'm sure it's difficult to do something like this, especially when you're so early in your development. Obviously you've got the technology underneath you, but as a company, you guys are new.
I got my email address set up 2 days ago.
Oh, very nice. That makes you official.
Yeah, it's real now.
Yeah, so I think in terms of critiques and that sort of stuff, not to belabor what other people have said already, but I think sort of making the origin story a little more concise, I think can work to your advantage. It sort of demonstrates how you've already, like you said, have this proven model that's come out of a company that's used it and tested it. But certainly from my perspective, I would have wanted sort of that introduction part and the breakdown of the technology flipped a little bit. Like you said, maybe you don't have the stuff to demonstrate it like you'd want to quite yet. But I was curious, how it worked, what it looked like, and wanted to dig into that a little bit more.
Okay.
Yeah. A question for you. So you talked about some of the difficulty with this installation, being differences between different jurisdictions, municipalities, all of that.
Yeah.
How are you guys set up to handle that? Are you only operating in California at this time? Are you guys nationwide, and how does that?
Yeah. So
what are those differences?
Yeah, great question. So all over California and Texas right now, that's where Infinity operates, but they have installers they work with and dealers in most every state that has significant solar demand. So we have access to partners that have all that information for all those localities. It's kind of interesting, the solar in general, how it is playing out right now is that you have this patchwork of solar developers, installers, and dealers, and they all partner together. And so they all know each other, they all work together. If somebody doesn't have an installer in Florida, they know a guy who's got an installer in Florida, and they work together and they share information. So yeah, I mean, I think one of the ways we can start developing that database is through some of our partners, and even some of our initial customers are going to be in markets that Infinity doesn't operate in. But yeah, that's something we're going to have to think about, because it'll be a gap for us if we find ourselves limited, not being able to work in a state, and one of our potential leads is operating fully in that state. That's a problem.
Sure, absolutely. And then I think you mentioned near the end that you were potentially offering some solutions to the end user.
Yeah.
What is that going to look like in your estimation? I don't know how far you are in the development there. And then you see that creating any problems with your B2B sort of sales, and then pivoting, or maybe some sort of conflict there?
Yeah, no, great question. And that's under development still. I mean, I think that's one area that hasn't been developed out yet in the current solution. And we have a whole bunch of ideas for that, for how we can capture that value. And I think that we would ideally avoid going B2C on that. We could still work through our installers, because the installers ultimately have access to the inverter data. So it may be that we end up providing this longer service to our installers who have the relationship with the customers. So what can those installers do to help drive their own sales by leveraging their clients for marketing purposes is one idea, for example. But yeah, we kind of have a skunk works of ideas going for what else we can add on that list.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you very much.
Great question, though.
All right, let's move on to Dan. And I note that John Sellup has
Responded in chat to Peter
comments
Mackin.
pardon?
I responded in chat to Peter Mackin.
Yeah, it's actually to Peter, but good things to follow up on there. We'll come back to it if we have some time. But Dan, what's your comment?
Great, thanks, Gary. And John Messner, thanks for presenting, and very good presentation for having just a short time. I absolutely agree with all the comments before. And I think just to give you some feedback, and from maybe somebody that maybe is not as familiar with some of the players as others are. In the beginning, I really thought it started off more as a customer presentation rather than an investor presentation. And you may just want to look at that, and you may want to actually think about different presentations for different audiences, including potential investors that don't have as much background in clean energy, or maybe the Sacramento clean energy companies.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. I also felt that it's important to explain the relationship with Infinity Energy, but I think there was too much emphasis in the beginning. It was almost, I think you have to yourself as somebody, as a company that's independent, even though it's a spinoff. There's definitely good points about being spun off and having the background and the resources available, but you need to establish yourself as your own company and as your own business. I think also a little more discussion on fiscal projections and also scaling. I'm not sure if each installation is going to be custom, or if you're going to be able to use the same type of software, or the installations are going to be pretty much the same. So just some comments about that would be really good. As well as the competition slide, you start off by saying, well, we've got a lot of competitors, and that's good and that's bad. It's good to have competition. That means that there is a market and there's a demand and people need it. But I think you could probably just talk about that a little differently. It sounds like that it's good that there's competition, because you can actually perhaps be used as an integrator for some of that competition with your potential customers. So make it as a way of that having a number of competitors is actually a strong suit for your product and for your business. Yeah, how you stand out beyond that. But I think for the amount of time that you've had to put together a presentation, you did a very good job, and it sounds like you're going to have a really good future. So good luck and congratulations.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, we're on I feel like the roller coaster is going like up right now. You know, it's like that ratchet noise on the way up.
Exactly.
So, thank you. Yeah, appreciate that. And great feedback. Thank you.
Welcome, Travis Andrin, to go ahead and present.
Thank you, Thomas. Greetings, everyone. It's always a pleasure to be speaking with an audience from California. I'll just share my screen here. You don't need sound. And I'm going to bring back this lovely video panel. Perfect. I just want to make sure everybody sees 3 images on the screen, including my friend Jenny, the Jersey cow.
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Within domestic livestock agriculture, each year in the US, 1 billion tons of manure are produced. Manure that contains valuable nutrients commonly used on croplands. This manure is commonly diluted with fresh water and applied to crops in an underinformed process. This practice has resulted in environmental damage to waterways and has even caused human health concerns like blue baby syndrome, a blood nitrate disorder in infants. We are Lemna. We know the value of fresh water, and we're here to help farmers use it more efficiently. Lemna provides a data-driven biological filter for manure water, making every drop legal, precise, and profitable for the farm. While states implement necessary water quality policies, many farmers are challenged to find compliant solutions that work for their farm. When we're referencing farming, it's helpful to remember that every state is different, every farm is different, and many farms are multi-sided businesses. A glimpse into California regulations identifies specific counties where the most stringent water quality regulations are enacted. Over 700 dairy farms in the red Priority 1 nitrate contamination zones are required to achieve water nitrate levels below the EPA mandate. One of these farms is Curdy Made Dairy in Corcoran, California. This 100-year-old dairy was recently issued a $65 million water nitrate lawsuit filed by the city council after testing groundwater and finding nitrates. When looking at existing nutrient management solutions, they often range from very low cost, offering little more than traditional compost, through to very complex and expensive chemical-based solutions. At Lemna, we use duckweed for phytoremediation. As one of the fastest growing aquatic plant species, duckweed rapidly embeds nutrients into the plant's biomass, reproducing 100% of that biomass in 12 to 36 hours. As a harvested asset, duckweed makes a high protein animal feed. It makes a high protein plant-based human consumption feed, can aid in anaerobic digestion and processing by balancing carbon and nitrogen ratios. And due to its ability to sequester carbon faster than other plant species, it's emerging as a biofuel feedstock. As a new technology, Lemna will fit within industry standard cost models. However, beyond providing just compliant water, we give farmers access and control over nutrient levels while producing a marketable asset for their farm. A closer look at the technology shows that Lemna's layered growth system is equipped with horticultural grow lights and an automated duckweed harvest system within a controlled environment. As duckweed is grown on the surface of incoming lagoon water, it is harvested twice daily, while the water is continually monitored by water quality sensors. Once the water quality reaches a desired nutrient density, it is effluated from the system into the farm's irrigation pond. These Lemna layers are stacked on standard warehouse shelving and installed in standard pole barn size structures on farm. The water quality data is conveyed back to the farmer in a convenient app that allows them to precisely plan irrigation events. Premium data packages give farmers precise control over when the water leaves the system based upon the desired nutrient profile specific to their crops. Lemna's service plan provides a hands-off operation for farmers, paired with options for additional water metric testing. From the top down, the livestock industry's manure management is often split by animal type. Lemna sees the most urgent need and greatest opportunity in the dairy and hog markets. In dairy, California leads the nation with the largest inventory, followed by Wisconsin and other states. Cumulatively, the annual spend on manure management in dairy exceeds $2.8 billion a year. The hog market is dominated by the state of Iowa, with over 3 times as many hogs as the next closest state. The hog manure management annual spend exceeds $13 billion annually. Lemna's projections over the next 10 years are modeled on standard dairy farm sizes of 2,000 head, using 50 gallons per head per day of water, an industry average. Based upon a standard MSRP of $1,649 per Lemna layer, we project annual growth that will position year 10 revenues to exceed $100 million annually, with a cumulative acquisition of just over 450 dairy farms from a national inventory of over 40,000. These projections do not currently account for inroads into the hog market, which you will remember is 4 times larger than the dairy market. To distribute Lemna technology, we leveraged the environmental performance of the technology through USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service cost match incentive programs. These programs are administered by a national network of technical service providers, and our 5-point distribution plan begins with the NRCS Comprehensive Nutrient Management Plan, a gateway process for the farmer to access these subsequent incentive programs. These CNMPs are written by a technical service provider in conjunction with the farmer. These technical service providers also serve as agricultural consultants to farmers, used for services like agronomy, nutritionists, and infrastructure development. Technical service providers are trained by third-party companies like AgLearn, Nutrient, the Dairy Management Institute, and companies that will evaluate Lemna's technology. Lemna uses these TSPs as a distribution network, like a dealership model, for sales and service. In order to launch this distribution plan, Lemna seeks USDA NRCS technology approval to acquire these cost match incentive programs. We are currently executing our phase 1 laboratory trials within a controlled environment growth chamber on Arizona State University's Polytechnic campus. These trials are providing a demonstrated effect of specific species of duckweed on manure lagoon water sourced from our 4 customer farms in California and Oregon. Our phase 2 on-farm trials are planned to begin in early 2022 and will last for the duration of 1 year, positioning containers of Lemna layers on farm for a multi-point performance evaluation, seeking the NRCS technology approval. Upon securing technology approval, we will plan our phase 3 market launch, anticipated for early 2023 at the World Ag Expo in Tulare, California. Lemna was founded by a team of industry professionals that bring decades of product development experience and international corporate leadership. As we progress through our development phases toward market launch, we'll be expanding our team with key roles integral to success. With a steadfast determination to help farmers perform better, we are today seeking to close our pre-seed investment round of $300,000 to complete our phase 1 trials and to prepare for our phase 2 on-farm evaluations in California and Oregon. Interested investors can reach me directly at travis@lemna.farm for a complete business plan. I thank you very much.
All right. Very good job. Round of applause for what we've done here with Travis. And I think probably the right place to start with our panel would be John Sullivan, Chairman of AgStart. John? You might be on mute.
I was dispensing wisdom, for all, but I was on mute. So thank you, Travis, for sharing your presentation. That's a very creative solution. And what struck me is you have a number of different business models all collapsed together in terms of what you're providing to the dairyman or the hog farmer, how the hog farmer actually uses that. I love the idea that you've got the federal government, the NRCS, standing behind you with incentives for growers, assuming this would get approved. I mean, you're still in the early phases, but once it got approved, having federal government support and incentives to encourage adoption of your technology is a huge plus. But it also struck me that there's a lot of moving parts in your presentation and your business. You are still very early stage in terms of the traction that you've achieved. You're in kind of early stage trials. Does it even work? And then you've got several phases beyond that to get the whole customer adoption model down. So a new dairyman, for example, who's threatened by a $65 million lawsuit for polluting groundwater, might say, I really got to get me some of that Lemna technology. How do I go about doing this? And I was unclear. Your presentation was a good presentation, but again, there's a lot of moving parts. I was a little bit lost, and maybe you catch me up on a farmer would install this. They would use the duckweed to extract nutrients from the manure lagoon, creating groundwater or creating groundwater that could be then used in place of groundwater for irrigation purposes. What happens to the duckweed again? Is there
Absolutely.
a whole offtake process that they need for that? Again, there's multiple things that are all engaged together, and maybe a picture showing the multiple inputs and outputs would be helpful for us to understand the dynamic that you were describing.
Certainly, happy to answer that. Just to give a little bit of background, so duckweed has been laboratory tested by multiple universities and peer reviewed to show that it does clean wastewater in a multitude of both municipal and agricultural situations. What we're doing is we are showing that we can do it, and that's always valuable for the investor community. To your point about what happens to the harvested duckweed, a very simple pelleting technology built into the installation will allow that farmer to feed that duckweed right back to their herd. It's got a 40% protein by mass, very similar to soybeans. And once you pellet it, it becomes very shelf stable.
So the capital cost then, the farmer would have to install the Lemna system to clean the water and create the duckweed. That would include a pelletizing system to turn into pellets. Those become shelf stable. They could store that in a barn or in silo and then feed that to their livestock throughout the ensuing year.
Correct. And on our financial slide, we do indicate that we have a brokerage program as well. So if that farmer would like to treat that high protein biomass as a revenue stream, we will broker the sale of that for them.
Lots of moving parts again, but if you can actually assemble that and keep that stack, in place, thumbs up. There is a tremendous need for solutions for water cleaning in the dairy and the hog industry. A huge opportunity.
Thank you, John.
So all power to you.
All right, thanks very much, John. Dan, did you want to add some additional comments?
Yeah, I think I agree with what John was saying. First of all, thanks for presenting and congratulations on I think a really relevant idea that has a really good potential. But for me, it was pretty difficult to follow the presentation. So I think a couple of things you can do is just rather than trying to say everything, just grab the important points. And what I tell a lot of people is on each slide, think about the message that you're trying to convey and then just say it really clear. So that way we don't have to think about it. But when we look at the slide, it's like, oh yeah, that's exactly what he's saying, and make it real simple for us. The other thing that I would like to ask is it better at this point to be raising equity, or is there grants available that could help fund the development? And that way you're not losing a portion of the company. You're holding on to it, and it's maybe another way of potentially getting more research or other people involved.
Most
And-
certainly, Dan. And I don't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to answer that part. We have filed for a $1.3 million conservation innovation grant from the NRCS. We'll be finding out about that later this month. We're also entering into the N2 program from Wells Fargo and the National Renewable Energy Lab, which has a $250,000 purse in conjunction with the Danforth Plant Science Center in St. Louis. So we have a multi-prong approach to raising capital today.
Yeah, I would try to get grant money and raise your potential valuation as much as possible before you get equity, or you start raising equity. It just helps you, and it reduces the risk for potential investors also. So it's just a better story. So you may want to emphasize that. I have a question whether the team is 100% on working for your company, or I looked at your website and the profiles for your team, and the LinkedIn profiles did not show your other team members actually working for another company rather than Lemna.
That's
So
correct.
you might want to comment about that.
Yeah, so they are currently fully employed. You'll also notice that they are actually not all centrally located here in the Phoenix Valley. So we are kind of a distributed team right now across the country, and they do have full-time career positions. They also have families to support and things like that. I am early in my family development, so I don't have any children to keep me tied to a regular income.
Okay. Well, good luck, I think, is something that definitely needs to be addressed, and it'd be great if your solution is really successful. So
That's great.
good
Thank
luck.
you, Dan.
Before we move to Janine, somebody raised a question here regarding contamination. If you're treating manure, and then you're taking the duckweed. So now I understand the name of the company, since duckweed is Lemna minor, and
Or
feeding it
Lemna
back to cattle. Is there any contamination, sanitation issues involved here?
There's a potential, yes. So duckweed is a bioaccumulator, and so we are actually launching our initial proof of concepts using Ketos water quality system, another California-based company that has a testing metric for over 20 to 26 contaminants. And so we will have a red flag if there is an elevated level of any heavy metals or any toxins within the system. And that would indicate that it is meant not for animal consumption, but it would be sent off for either biofuel production or anaerobic digestion processing.
How about bacterial or virus contamination?
So as a pretreatment to the Lemna system, we do a sand media filter, but then we also do a UV sanitization process.
Okay.
And so to
Yeah.
kill off any microbiome or algae coming into the system. We see future potentials with helping to remediate confined waterways with harmful algae blooms today by killing off that algae and ridding that water of high nutrient content as well.
Great. All right, let's turn to Janine.
Travis, thank you so much for your presentation. As a former clean tech entrepreneur, I can appreciate how hard it is to tell the story when you're trying to do stuff in a circular economy kind of closed loop system kind of way. And so I really appreciate the vision that you've got going forward here and the technology that you're building. One of the things I thought that worked really well in terms of being able to tell that story as somebody who's not terribly familiar with the dairy industry or with livestock raising is that, you know, when you had some of those animations about that, how the technology worked or something like that, that was a really effective use of animation. And then there were a couple of places where you had a lot of things going on to a slide, and I found myself trying to read the slide while you were talking. And it was, and sort of to John's point, it got a little busy. So in that sense, I think there's that opportunity to sort of pare it down and think about the investor relationship as sort of a dating relationship as you're moving forward with them. So, you know, you don't need to be naming your children on the first date. You can save some of the mystery for a follow-on conversation or for that second or third meeting. You know, you can really lay out just the big picture and what it is you're trying to solve societally, and then what you're trying to solve for that farmer specifically. And I think you started to do that at the beginning. It's just that the message got a little bit lost in that signal to noise ratio as you were explaining how deeply you've already thought about all of the angles. So that would just be my suggestion there. I'm really excited for you. And I think that as you sort of tighten up just those key talking points for each slide, you could probably do like 20% of what you gave us would be probably the right ratio of information to give us to then start the conversation, as opposed to feeling like you need to have that full conversation in your 10-minute pitch. And then the only thing that I would actually love to see a little bit more of is just that customer journey, because you do have so many touch points in how a customer engages with your technology and how and why. So, you know, having a diagram potentially showing that, or a series of, you know, 2 or 3 slides that shows first there's this touch point, then this thing happens, then this thing happens, then you feed them the duckweed, then you water your fields, might just help break it down for, you know, the average investor that may care a lot about sustainability, but might not know a whole lot about that customer workflow.
Certainly. Very helpful. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, let's turn to Justin and then to Alex. Justin?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Travis. It was a great presentation. I think, like some people have mentioned, you're obviously very passionate and very knowledgeable about all this stuff. I think that definitely comes across, but not all of us are there yet. So like they were saying, you know, simplify it a little bit and, you know, keep the passion, of course, you know, bring us along for the ride, but yeah, guide us a little bit. Don't make us hang on quite so much. So what I think sort of related to some of the other, you know, animation and touch point items people have talked about, what is a typical farmer doing now for this sort of solution? Do they have a facility that's doing this that you're replacing, or is this something new they're going to add on and build something out, or what's that look like?
Certainly. So any farmer that doesn't have a manure treatment process today, so remembering that every farm is different, is going to have a series of settling lagoons, and the solids in those lagoons are going to settle to the bottom. The water will be skimmed off the top into the next until it reaches the irrigation pond, which is then sucked out of the irrigation pond and used to irrigate and fertilize the fields. Now that's a generalized statement. Sometimes it's slurry. Sometimes they let it dry on a concrete slab and evaporate into the air, releasing sulfur dioxide and nitrous oxide and all these other things. So on a very low end, that's what's happening. On the very high end, you have chemical flocculants that are being added in a thermal chemical process to pelletize the manure, to the tune of about $200,000 a year in chemical costs, and probably about another $300,000 a year in energy costs. And so that becomes another business to lay on top of your existing livestock business in and of itself.
I've never heard the word flocculants before, but I'm going to try and use that in a sentence as quickly as I can here.
It works for Christmas trees too.
Yes, you can. Yes.
But not with manure.
Yeah. So are you targeting some of the lower end people who don't have a sophisticated solution yet, or are you trying to replace somebody else?
So our target on the dairy side, our target farm is 2,000 head and above. And we piggyback on the anaerobic digestion market with that. They won't install below 2,000 head. It's not economically viable for them, because what happens at that point in time is an infrastructure shift on the farm. It goes from kind of a mom and pop farm all the way up to a mechanized business that has many moving infrastructure components, and they're really looking to optimize the efficiency of their operation.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you very much.
We also find ourselves to be a nice complement to anaerobic digestion, not only because we can treat the water coming off of that, but we can also provide the feedstock to go into it as well and produce a better fertilizer on the backside.
Great.
All right, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, Travis, let me echo that it's always wonderful to hear an expert who's passionate. That, you know, for investors, that gets our heart pounding. We get excited about that. When it comes to clarity of messaging, I'm going to just throw something into the chat for everybody to use. It's a standard template from a large, you know, venture capital firm. And I know it can feel a little bit samey to use a template, but sometimes it can help to get clarity of message. Later on, I'll also put in my contact information and invite you and anybody else who might like to follow up, because there's not always time here. What I do want to say about your idea is that I think it's important and timely. And when you told me, because I really don't know anything about the agricultural industry, I rely on John Sellup for everything that I know in that industry. And to hear that it's a $15 billion exercise to deal with manure is a very interesting piece of information that I did not have. And to understand that you're trying to create a virtuous circle inside of the farm, I think that's a timely idea. I think there's going to be traction for that. The challenge is in boiling it down to something that you can communicate in a relatively brief period of time. And it might have been Janine who said, you know, you don't need to name the kids on the first date. I think that's a really wonderful analogy. What you're looking for with your deck is to get that fits my thesis, or I'm interested in that topic. I'd like to know more from this expert, because you're clearly an expert, Travis. And if I had any interest in that area as an investment thesis, you would be a friend that I would look to for trusted advice.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate it. That would be my lifelong academic career. My first graduate degree is in environmental policy, and now this newest one, which Lemna was designed within, is innovation and venture development at ASU. And this is kind of spun out from that program. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, a timely and worthwhile problem. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. You got a question on here too from Mark Roost about methane digesters. So take a look at that and see if you can communicate with Mark in the chat room. But we need to move back to Wendy, and we'll see how Hex's biomass slides turned out. I assume, Thomas, you got the slide deck, but let's move on to Wendy Owens with Hex's biomass. Wendy has a company based in Seattle, but with a good connection in Chico. And she comes to us by having a good recommendation coming out of Chico. So Wendy, you can go ahead and put your slides up and take it from there.
Thank you very much. I'm Wendy Owens. I'm the CEO and founder of Hexus again. And next slide, please, Thomas. Hexus is a biomaterials technology company. We sell a carbon negative plant-based fiber that can replace wood and corn, fossil fuel-based feedstocks, and other raw materials in many different applications. We've been fortunate enough to receive grants and business development support from these organizations. Next slide. So this is a fairly bleak slide. The purpose of this is to show that we are cutting down 15 billion trees every year around the globe. And clear cutting is a problem, even though lots of people say we have managed forests and we're still putting more trees in the ground. There are issues in some locations where this is happening. In addition, we have over 1.25 million acres of marginal cropland that can no longer produce food crops there. And we believe we have a solution that can help solve both of these problems. And we want to really change this equation. So I came across this pretty cool plant once upon a time, and it looks like corn and bamboo had a baby. It's tall, it grows well, and I thought, wow, this looks like a cool plant. And my background is materials engineering, so I looked at it from a materials perspective. And it doesn't cost much to produce. It is good for the soil and farmers and the environment. And so I went ahead and developed out some proprietary varieties of this plant over several years. And I call this plant Xanograss, and we consider it a green solution. It sequesters over 13 tons of carbon per acre per year, both below and above ground total. Has very low water requirements. It's climate resilient. Does not require any pesticides. It fixes nitrogen into the soil. It grows in different climates and soils, and we are growing it so we're not displacing food crops. So really focused on that marginal degraded cropland. And we can use mechanical production and harvesting for growing. So in terms of capabilities, we have developed our own proprietary plant varieties that grow in salinated soil, low water soil, really terrible soil like strip mined, and otherwise provide us a really high yield for 15 to 20 years. And we have very consistent properties from this grass year over year, which is important to our customers. And we have a reliable, dedicated supply that we can provide. We harvest once annually, maybe twice, depending on the location we're growing. And this is a hyperaccumulator, and we also can do bioremediation. So it can decontaminate soils that are polluted with different metals and salts and chemicals. So our fiber that we produce from the grass, we call xanofiber, and it becomes many different products, from boards to biofuels and paper and bioplastics. So you see on the left some formatted material for different applications. And then we have some of our boards and pellets, and those aren't our paper, but we have made paper and so forth with it. So we've really come to the conclusion about what our customers want. Done a lot of customer discovery on how we would supplement or replace wood and corn and fossil fuel-based feedstocks, bamboo, et cetera, in these various applications. They want a low-cost, high-quality plant-based material. They want consistent properties every year. They want a reliable supply. And they want to be able to use this fiber in their existing facilities and systems. So they do not have to change their light fixture to use our light bulb, essentially. They want their products that are made with this fiber to retain the same functionality and aesthetic appeal as they currently have. And then they all have sustainability goals, and the publicly traded ones here in the US have their Scope 3 objectives that they're looking to meet. And what they don't want to contribute to is all the issues that are now they're sort of hammering them from a PR perspective. So in terms of being a competitive biomass crop, when we look at other competitive crops, such as scampus, bamboo, hemp, and switchgrass, we have an excessively high yield. We're very land use efficient. And because our inputs are low, we're also very low costs in terms of our per ton cost per acre. This crop also is an EPA approved bioenergy crop, which meets the renewable fuel standards and qualifies for those very important RINs, including the D3, D6, and D7 RINs that are very valuable as an advanced cellulosic biofeedstock. So we're happy about that. In terms of our business model, we have developed what I call my farm to fiber. You've heard of farm to fork. We have farm to fiber platform, and it's pretty straightforward. So we are cloning this plant. It is a sterile plant, therefore it is also not invasive. And we use these clones as our feedstock for plantation. And then we contract with farmers directly. And I'm sorry about the little issues with the font. I use a different font, so that's why Grow Xanograss looks really far apart. We contract with our farmers directly. They grow, and we provide them the technical assistance they need for meeting their yield requirements, and they maintain our plantations. If they don't have the harvesting equipment necessary to do the correct format of harvesting of the grass for the end product that this specific plantation is dedicated to, then we'll harvest, and then if we have to post-harvest process, we'll do some post-harvest processing. We minimize our touch with all of this, and we're using currently existing equipment, so it's off the shelf. So we signed 10+ year supply agreements with our customers, and for delivering that conversion ready fiber. And then we sell on a per ton basis, and the price per ton will have a varying range in how much touch we actually have to have in terms of processing it into a conversion ready format. Right now, we've started with the first target market being fiber boards, and we've had great success in testing and also a first pilot supply agreement in this industry. So with particle board, medium density fiber board, and we've also just recently been testing an oriented strand board, and have proven much better than wood in that case. And we recently won a grant from the Department of Energy's SBIR and we are phase 1. And so we are moving into the bioenergy realm. And it's been very interesting. We did the DOE Core program this fall and did a lot of customer discovery. So we're starting to really understand this segment for us in particular, because we can be used as a biofuel, but we also can be used as a direct combustion bioenergy pellet. In terms of our traction and our pipeline, we do have our supply testing supply agreement, pilot agreement over in Europe. And then we're working with these other companies, either already testing and moving into a negotiation for supply agreement, or doing some additional testing with them, from everything from boards through bioplastics, energy pellets, and at the bottom, we're doing bioenergy and fiber with a publicly traded Canadian company. They're a gas and oil company, and we're focused on a joint venture that we're running with them in Indonesia, actually for bioenergy and for fiber products. So we'll be signing that this month. We're doing a lot of testing and collaboration. That's, a lot of this is we're working really hard not to be test to death, which I know is something that can happen with startups. But we have been successful in our testing thus far. And we're working with key vendors and potential customers on that. We have developed co-marketing projects with BASF, Tamar Hellas, and we're working towards one with Georgia Pacific Chemicals. And I spent over an hour and a half talking to their general manager at a conference I was at as a keynote a couple of weeks ago in Georgia. We are filing our patents this November. We're almost done. Boy, that's been a lot of work. And then for plants in particular, you can file a patent for a plant in the US, but you can't do that anywhere else in the world. So you have to file what are called UPOV filings for specific varieties. These are the kind of intellectual property coverage that you would get for roses or apples or other plants outside the US. So we are also working on those. Thomas is doing a great job. So we're starting with a seed round. Thus far, we're looking at a $300,000 seed round. I have bootstrapped this thing, working on the side as well, but now working pretty much full time with this for about $200,000. So I own it 100%. This is my 4th startup. So I know that sometimes to get started, you have to put a little more than just sweat equity into this. We received over $200,000 in grants, and we are applying for our phase 2 SBIR from the DOE, which will be a $1.1 million grant. We'll know about that in June. And we've also applied for another SBIR grant from the USDA, which is under $250,000. So the $300,000, we want to get it to a certain point, finalize our supply agreements, complete our particle board and MDF testing in the United States and in Europe, and then complete our harvesting and processing intellectual property, specifically for giant perennial grasses. And when we are all said and done, and we will also probably look for a second round of funding, depending on whether or not we're financing yet against our supply agreements, or if we do need additional cash to go forward. But after the $300,000 funds are used, we will be prepared to service our supply agreements, to hire additional people, to execute in our pipeline opportunities that you saw, and also continue to increase our business development efforts. And though this may be a little ways off, especially for an agriculturally based company, we are looking at potential acquisition. We already have a relationship with Sumitomo, and so they're a great aggregator of different technologies. And then we're talking with commodities fiber suppliers. We are also already have a customer that is an integrator here listed. I can't mention their name without an NDA. But for this, we would bring these long-term steady revenues on the supply agreements. And usually between an annual revenue for our supply agreements, it's around 1.6 million to 3.5 million, 3.6 million, depending on the volume that's required. And we know that once we have 1 million or so acres in the ground, we would be an excellent acquisition opportunity. Just a little example here, we don't compare directly to trees, but $4.8 billion would be a nice acquisition point for us. Like I said, this is my 4th startup, so I have done this many times in the past. It's okay, Thomas, keep on going, you're fine. My agronomist, John Carroll, has extensive experience with bioenergy crops, We have my business development director is expert in gas and oil and bioenergy, and then we have a communications director. My advisors are just superb. They kind of run the gambit from finance through business, industry, specifically in also the science behind what we're doing. And so they've been very supportive throughout our time. And specifically for this audience, I just want to mention that our Xanofiber is good for our farmers. This is one of our farmers in Hungary. So we are providing them with long-term contracts with a fair price, and we negotiate that price up front with them, with minimum labor and inputs in terms of nutrients and water. My farmers love this. We kind of talk a little bit, and then they go off and grow. The grass just grows, and then we come back in time for harvesting, and which has been interesting during COVID, I must say, them being in Europe, some of them. And then we use their marginal land. So we're increasing their revenue, often replacing hay or us putting in some fallow fields. But what this plant will also do is increase water holding capacity and provide other ecosystem services to this farmland. And in Hungary, we're actually using it to grow alongside row crops to prevent chemical fertilizers from running off into the Danube River. And that's it. And I very much look forward to your questions. Thank you so much.
All right, round of applause for Wendy and her presentation. Great presentation. So this is some kind of cane grass is what I'm looking at, right?
No, it's
No.
not.
Okay. What's the species?
That's proprietary.
Okay.
Mystery grass.
Yeah, right.
It's yeah, it's from an arundo, a type of arundo.
Okay.
Just kidding, Gary. It's a
So let's turn to John again as an ag expert, but this is very interesting.
Thank you.
And there's a supplemental question somebody asked, maybe you could work it in here. We've had a plant go bankrupt called Cal Plant. It was using mostly rice straw.
Yeah, I know
straw
Jerry. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Jerry. Yeah.
And you know, they didn't do so well in this, but there's a lot of silicon in rice straw. But John,
Yeah.
go ahead and give some comments.
Well, thank you, Wendy, for sharing that. Just to build on the Cal plant that went bankrupt, the challenge with a lot of material conversion companies, and I think Cal plant ran afoul of that, is it's very capital intensive to build conversion plants. I mean, when the market is working, it can be very lucrative, but when you have a disruption like COVID or something else, you know, any hiccup, when you've got, you know, multi-million-dollar capital investments and you've got bankers that are expecting to get paid back on their loans and things like that, you know, it can go bad, it can go sour, you know, very quickly.
So we're not asking anyone to change their equipment, John. We're actually a drop-in solution. So we are,
which is great. Yeah, you're making. I was just commenting on the
oh yes, on the Cal plant. I'm sorry to interrupt.
The bad news that Gary was referring to.
Yeah.
But Wendy, I love your model. You've discovered a particular plant that has unique, you know, attributes. One of the things from a presentation standpoint that was confusing is you launched into talking about your customers. But you never defined that until way at the end when you start talking about Georgia Pacific Chemicals and BASF and others. In the upfront portion of the material, it was unclear whether your customers were growers, farmers themselves, because you really have a multi-sided relationship. You're working with growers under contract. You're acting as kind of you're assembling a supply chain and delivering fiber or bioenergy, you know, raw material to the downstream customer, if you will, you know, the MDF, you know, strand board manufacturer or, you know, a warehouser or someone else. It would be useful for you to define those terms so that people could follow your presentation more easily. Just to, you know, maybe reorder or just make clear when you use the phrase customer that you define exactly who that is.
Okay.
It was also unclear in terms of the growers, which geographies, you know, only at the end did you talk about Hungary and the marginal lands. You know, this is not California Central Valley, San Joaquin Valley, you know, bottomland. This is for the really marginal land that if it's producing, you know, 25 tons per acre at maybe $100 a ton, that's a $2,500 per acre, you know, harvest tops. And, you know, so that's clearly not California Central Valley where they're getting, you know, thousands of dollars per acre. You know, almonds are $7,000 to $8,000 per acre per year. So, you know, again, marginal land, if you can convert marginal land into something productive, there's a good value proposition in it for the grower. It was, again, unclear from your presentation, and I think it would be useful to add just how little capital investment is required. You know, it's not a big major plant that has all the issues that we're talking about with CalPlant. If the existing paper mills or strand board mills and everything else can just drop this in as a replacement, you know, that's wonderful. From a fundraising standpoint, though, you're still very early stage. You're in that, you know, SBIR, just proving, you know, proof of concept that this whole value chain that you're assembling can actually work. And so I leverage and I salute the fact that you've got the SBIR grants. I would continue to pursue those. Companies can get multiple SBIR grants from Department of Energy, from USDA. There's a lot of different agencies that have this as their interest, and that allows you to get a lot farther down the traction, you know, journey before you start raising equity capital. Because I think investors are going to say this is a long and uncertain path, and your valuation won't really increase substantially until you can show, you know, meaningful traction. Maybe one customer where you're delivering, you know, X number of tons per year, and they love the strand board that comes out of it, and they're, you know, tripling their orders for next year or something. Now you start to show some real market traction with that. And maybe I'm misunderstanding the state you're in. Maybe you already have achieved that, but it was confusing to understand exactly where you were from a traction standpoint from the presentations you shared. But it's a wonderful opportunity. You clearly have an IP position there with a proprietary plant product that you can control, and by contracting with growers rather than selling through, you know, seed dealers or whatever, you can really carefully control who has access to your plant and control the quality that you deliver to your ultimate customer down the road. It's a good job.
That's the goal, yes. And we are about to sign supply agreements. We have proved out our model in Europe with a larger, and it sounds like that's not clear. I'm not really allowed to talk about that, so it's hard to integrate into
We don't want you to have to shoot us, but
yeah,
it would help comprehension for the pitch deck to perhaps lay out where does this marginal land exist, which geographies around the world, you know, where is the real opportunity. And you're creating biomass that will be expensive to transport. So if the strand board manufacturing plants or the bioenergy plants are located nearby that marginal farmland, that sounds like that's a bullseye in terms of what you're targeting. Where does that exist? You know, is this again, California Central Valley? Is this a Utah, you know, kind of wasteland, half desert? Is this depleted brown fields near, you know, old industrial plants where the ground has been polluted and can only be used for, you know, non-food production or something like that? Again, targeting exactly, helping us get our frame of reference so we understand who you're really trying to reach and in which geographies. I was surprised when you said Hungary. You know, you're an international business already, and you're just in the pre-seed stages. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, let's move to Justin.
Yeah, thank you. We gotta stop letting John go first. He's making a lot of good points and taking some of the.
I'm not leaving anything behind for other people. Sorry. I'll zip my lips now. You know, take it away.
Yeah, no, great presentation, Wendy. To echo a little bit of what John said, I think if you move that, you know, sort of a supply chain graphic, if you just move that up a little bit earlier, I think it would help the comprehension. I was sort of waiting for that, and then when you showed it, it's like, okay, great. But then we've moved on from some of the stuff that you discussed. So I think that would be really helpful. In terms of the sort of international aspect of things, I'm vaguely familiar with a plant patent. I'm not at all familiar with the UPOV. Is that something that's just a different version of a plant patent internationally, or is it a lesser protection? Maybe a little bit of explanation on that, you know, when you get into the international nature of things and how you are still protecting your proprietary rights internationally, or potentially what the risks are because of the lesser protection that offers.
Yeah, it wouldn't be lesser, it would be comparable. It's just for your information, it's through the World Intellectual Property Organization. So it's very much standard. if you sell roses commercially, for example, and you would protect that in those different varieties in each country. So it's a long established, but it's a very good point from a legal perspective. Yes.
Okay, great. And then one other question. So is your solution something that completely replaces wood or whatever other materials are being used, or is it something that could sort of supplement it and reduce the use of wood, but maybe not replace it entirely?
Yeah, so we can supplement or substitute completely. So what we've been testing in mostly is in supplementation, though we have done some complete replacements as well. And where we can supplement, we have gotten excellent performance in terms of the physical properties and water absorption performance, and blending right in with wood, for example, and then as a supplement for corn in a biogas production methane digester, for example. So yeah.
Okay, perfect.
And that's,
Yeah, that's
kind of our route first, is supplementing. Yes.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up question, was how does it perform compared to what it's replacing?
Yeah, it performs very well. So.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, let's move to Dan Kellen.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you, Wendy. Very good presentation. Following John is always a hard act to follow. He made a lot of good points, which one thing I can say is, as you can see from my virtual background, I am a gardener. And I think you answered all my botanical questions, but there are still some business related questions that still need to be answered. So you might just want to keep that in mind. And I know the phase that you're at, but as an experienced entrepreneur, especially when you're presenting to investors, always make sure the business part of it is in there, because I did have some questions. I wasn't quite sure what your end product is and where the post-processing comes in play, and where that product, when that product actually is shipped to your end customers. So maybe if you could make that just a little bit more clear. And on the, I think you did a good job of showing that this is good for marginal land and the deforestation. But if you could put some kind of monetary value as far as the impact with the deforestation and the marginal lands are costing farmers, that would be good. And is there other incentives or reasons for using your product, using Xanografts? Are there government level incentives? Is there organizations that are really trying to promote the use of this type of land, or is there something else that's, rather than just a bunch of individual farmers, is there like an overlooming regulations or something that can really make it much more appealing for potential investment?
And there are those, yes, there are those, absolutely. But I will bring them up. I debated whether to enter into that and have to then explain the programs, or not. But I will certainly add those to it.
Well, you may not have to explain it too much during this presentation, maybe later on the second and third date.
Okay.
But at least if you can give some idea of how large those programs are they in billions of dollars? That forms some idea of how big the potential market would be. But I thought it was a very good presentation. I was able to follow it pretty well, and we can see that this is not your first presentation, so very well done.
Thank you.
All right.
I appreciate the feedback.
Thank you, Dan. I also want to say I appreciate the notes that you put in the slides so that I could click through them almost when you're talking with them. With that, Janine, did you have any comments that you want to add?
Great presentation. I love people who do materials science and are thinking about these types of materials plays. So I was having a lot of fun just kind of geeking out on what you're doing. I think mostly actually I just have like little comments because I really want to see you succeed. So I'm going to stay away from all of like the investor stuff that already has been discussed. But so just a couple of really quick things. One is as far as your involvement with Department of Energy, I don't know if you're aware or not, but they are actually changing some of their intellectual property policies with regards to their grantees and what rights they reserve to assert over their grantees in the future. So it looks like you're nodding your head and you're aware of them, but if you're not,
Thank you.
bear that in mind as a path that you may or may not want to go down in the future. So looks like you're pretty savvy on that front though, so I'm glad to see that. And then also, I think one of the things that I was sort of putting in the chat, as I mentioned to Travis, you know, that there's sort of like the deck for the people who really get ag and really get dairy and get water pollution, and then the people who don't quite get it that are interested in sustainability. I almost wonder if there's an opportunity for you to have your sort of your general audience deck, and then a deck that's specifically for people like the chemical angels, and a deck that's specifically for impact investors who are looking at the play that's more so around the societal issues and the quantification of that stuff. Just so that way you're sort of able to tailor your message to those different groups. And maybe again, you already have, but it just seemed sort of like an interesting lens through which I can see a lot of different people wanting to work with you for many different reasons.
That's a good idea.
You know, and at the same time, if you try to use the same deck with everybody, everyone might kind of miss the point.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I love it. I love where you're going with it. So yeah.
Thank you.
I guess actually one other thing, I don't know if you've come across these people in your community. Have you come across Mobius?
Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure. I've heard that
They've done, lignins into bioplastics. But they had a similar issue where they were doing materials science and, you know, had a bajillion different applications for their technology, and they really had to figure out where to start and why. And so just if you do get pushback from investors, or as you do go through these I-Corps type programs, it's a really great way to start thinking about what's that go-to-market stack, as opposed to trying to be in all of those different verticals at once.
Yeah, and that we've been trying to listen to the market as to where the higher margins are and so forth. And we actually, under our DOE grant, just to speak to the issue of where is the marginal land and so forth, we are doing a go no-go matrix that we're building in terms of, could we plant here? Would it work here? Are we within that 60-mile radius of for shipping, because we have a low density of material? So we're working with CSU Chico's MBA students right now under the DOE grant to do that. And so that's a very important part. And then we would turn that into a piece of software, which I'm being very careful about DOE and what we develop under there. I know. And going from there. So we are considering these issues. It doesn't come through in this deck. It's a lot, and it's a question is, how to best do it. So I really appreciate this feedback onto how to balance this. And I wasn't quite sure of the audience tonight too, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I think you're on a really great track. I'm excited to see where you'll go.
Yeah, we the joint venture in Indonesia is not a pilot. It's actually going to be full scale for bioenergy. We probably have right now more than we can handle. And that's one of the reasons we're trying to be very careful and making decisions about these things. So I'm definitely drinking from the fire hose at the moment, because it is so popular to have an alternative to wood, and then also to have a carbon negative source for raw material. So yeah.
Yep. Awesome.
All right, thank you. And the last comment and question, feedback from Alex.
Well, Wendy, that was last, but certainly not least. It was definitely worth waiting for.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, one thing that really came across is your experience as a CEO in prior startups. And I have a hunch that you have a lot more traction than was apparent in that deck. And when you're going for investment, I think that you want to lead with the traction story, because investors are looking for not just great ideas, but strong risk mitigation. And there's really very little risk mitigation that's better than joint ventures with large companies that need your product. I really like that you began with the end in mind. You thought about what you were going to do with the fiber. You considered the value chain all the way through. I think John really hit on something, which is that realizing that you're an international company. You know, is Hungary the beachhead? Is Indonesia the beachhead? Is California the beachhead market? Because in that value chain, which I understand why you did it. I think it's a great idea to do it. And the dollars that are involved, particularly in the building trades, the building industries, that you're in a position to be able to help out with. And we're all aware of the cost of materials rising dramatically. I think it's very timely. I think it's just difficult to, I can hear your experience, but I can't see your experience. And I would love to see your experience come through on that deck in terms of your business proposition.
Okay, I appreciate that, Alex. Yeah, I can certainly do a better job of that.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. None of this matters without the entrepreneurs. So, right, you guys are the gold in the gold mine that everyone's looking for. So thanks to all of you for being here.
Well, that's a great wrap-up comment. We have gone a little bit over. I would encourage each of the presenters to seek follow-up with the pros we've had on the panel. You can reach them through us at CleanStart. But I think they gave you really good feedback tonight. You all had great presentations, very interesting stuff. Always so interesting to hear about all the creativity that's out there. So round of applause for our panel and for our presenters tonight. Great job, and get a lot of good feedback off of the chat. There's still a few questions on the chat if people want to take a look at what we've got there. But in the interest of wrapping up, let me turn it back to Thomas. Thomas?
I want to thank everyone for coming and for putting on a great event tonight. I really enjoyed the pitches, and I feel like they got some really good feedback from our panel, or from our expert panel. Hold on one second as I move my things around the screen. I encourage everyone to stay connected with CleanStart, with Blue Tech Valley, Momentum. You can find us on Twitter, Empower Innovation. That's the CEC's LinkedIn-like page. Also, you can find us on LinkedIn and on YouTube. I want to thank our panel for joining us today and their organizations, which they represent. Again, a big thank you to our sponsors, along with those of you that donated through your tickets. That really helps us and kind of validates us putting on the event. I also want to give a shout out or a plea or and ask one more time for please supporting CleanStart and get yourself up on that wall of heroes. And a big fun announcement. How fast does this work? Thank you for Evolution Accelerator for donating to us tonight. That is Alex there, who has an accelerator that has helped a lot of companies, including Wind Harvest Energy, that just won the Innovation Award in Sustainability. I'm going to put a link to our YouTube and our PayPal support button if you want to join Alex up on that wall, or just get enough, help us with enough to get coffee. Any amount of it helps. I also want to thank our overall sponsors, Weintraub Tobin, Moss Adams, GT Law, Reverent, Sac State, and Hacker Lab, where I'm at right now. And thank all of you for coming.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Great performance, great event. We'll see you at the next one in the first quarter of next year.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.